My name is Matt Soar. I'm an Associate Professor of Communication Studies here at Concordia, and I'm currently the BA Programs Director. So in around 2006, our dearly departed colleague Marty Allure stopped me in the corridor one day and said that he had heard about a piece of software that I might be interested in for Intermedia, which was for making interactive narratives, nonlinear narratives, database-driven narratives. And I went to look for it. It was called Korsakov. It was invented in the late 1990s by a very talented artist and filmmaker called Florian Thalhofer, who's based in Berlin in Germany. I reached out to Florian and we brought him in a couple of times to visit the department to do some workshops. We started using the software. It became apparent to us that as clever as the software is, that version was not running very well anymore because of the way that it had been built, the way it had been programmed. And I worked with a colleague of mine, Monica King-Gagnon, to secure some funding so that we could rebuild it. So we were lucky enough to get some funding, and we worked for a total of actually 7 years with Monica, with Florian, redeveloping the software and relaunching it as open source software. We rebuilt it from the ground up. And since then, I've taught any number of workshops on Korsakov. We've used it in the classroom a lot. I've collaborated with a lot of people on it. And we've seen some really, really amazing work come out of classes, come out of graduate student thesis work. I've certainly produced work I'm very, very proud of. Monica produced a really interesting film. Florian continues to create really amazing work. And what we've seen in parallel in the last 6 to 8 years is an explosion in interactive narrative work that is now termed things like procedural narrative, database narrative, web docs, iDocs, which is a very new and very, very exciting area. There's lots of different competing tools, but Korsakov has been a really integral part of that story, and I'm very proud of it for that purpose. Given the work that I've done on Korsakov over the years and the other kinds of tools we've used, we used to use Flash quite a lot in Intermedia. Twine we've been using this year. So these are different kinds of tools for different kinds of interactive work. I'm also quite active on the conference circuit, and I've written and published work around this area. I'm really beginning to feel right now, in 2016, that the term interactivity is a little bit hollow at this point. It's a little bit like using the term new media, or it's a little bit like using the term alternative rock. You know, they're terms that really become quite sort of evacuated of meaning. They just don't really seem to mean all that much. And I think especially around interactivity, there's been a real kind of I would say a kind of fetishization of the term, where it's got a lot more weight than it deserves. It takes up a lot of the conversation, a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the discourse around these new media forms that is perhaps undeserved. Where's it going? I really don't know. I mean, what we're seeing in web documentary, for instance, the stuff that's getting attention right now is the stuff that is really, it's not so much the content, it's based on the novelty value. And novelty has a lot to do with it. So is it hooked into social media? So you have to sign in to the documentary with your Facebook account? Is it 3D? Is it gamified? Does it have augmented reality elements to it? I mean, these are all, broadly speaking, really fascinating developments, but then they're not ones that excite me in terms of the kind of work that I'm doing. That said, this year we've seen some amazing work coming through in Intermedia involving installation works, performative works, works that are interactive in a much broader sense. You know, sitting on a stationary bicycle, and as you pedal, you're navigating through a town. You know, for instance, that kind of interactivity. There's a student doing a really interesting project using Google Cardboard, for instance. You know, so there are enriched forms of media engagement that are cropping up all the time that we support through Intermedia. In terms of developments, it's really very, very hard to say. I think a lot of us are struggling to take account of what's already happened in the last year, as much as what might be happening in the next 6 months.